Well, everybody, I am so excited actually because I've been Maestro White. Should I keep calling you? Yeah, I'm going to keep calling you Maestro.
You can call me anything you want.
I'm sure people do.
Yeah, that's true.
I've been so excited because this is Maestro Stephen White. Maestro Stephen White. Gosh, we met in we met in
Phoenicia, right?
Yeah.
Phoenicia. And you were there for Butterfly. You were there for Butterfly. I want to say that was 2013 or 2012. I can't remember. 12 or 13.
Yes. And then I was lucky enough to be conducted by you for one of my final gigs, actually, Tosca. Well, I didn't realize it was my final gig at the time, but one of my final gigs, Tosca by Giacomo Puccini at Arizona Opera. And
I was lucky to have you, my friend. You were great.
I still listen to it. What a magical. I'll never forget when, and you were like, yes, because I like sustained the B flat. You know, those little moments with conductors are huge. Yeah. Can you tell people what a conductor is for the sake of their understand? Well, I mean, like the 90-second version.
The 90-second version. A conductor is someone. The more I realize this, particularly when you're dealing with opera, symphonic music, doesn't matter. You are both listening and leading at the same time. You are serving. And it reminds me of a flight attendant. The flight attendants are the only people I know that are both authority figures and and servants at the same time. You know, they're there to serve you. But but the moment you get out of your seat in the wrong time, get back in your seat. You know, conducting is somewhat that way. I mean, we're here to try to give our fellow musicians something that they can hang on to, both to be together as an ensemble. And also to make the music in a very heightened kind of passionate way. But the moment that things are starting to fall apart, it's up to us to try to gather it all together.
Yeah.
The act of conducting, which is to say moving your arms about, that is a silent act, and you're trying to give gestures to all of your people that have meaning, that have the same meaning to everybody in such a way that ensemble is what we're trying to get out. Ensemble. The French word for together. That's really the reason a conductor is necessary at the most basic level, is to try to keep everything together, not just in time, but together with the same interpretation, together with the same level of fancy, with the same level of passion, with the same level of remorse. It doesn't matter how we're interpreting the piece. We want to try to get everyone on the same page. And that's basically what a conductor's job in the moment is. We have a rehearsal process that we allow ourselves to facilitate that. But conducting is the greatest privilege there is, in my view, in classical music. And the responsibility of it is commensurate with that privilege. You know, everyone wishes they could conduct. A lot of times everyone thinks they can conduct. But the point is, it is a privilege to be that person, you know, whether you're dealing with 800 people. Let's pretend you're doing Mahler's Eighth Symphony, or you're doing just a very small piece, but you're the person that it all has to run through. It's an unbelievable privilege. So you better take it. You better have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and you better be able to have answers in the moment. So that's why it's endlessly studying the music, both from a technical standpoint and from a content standpoint. That's more than 90 seconds, but that's basically.
Well, I love it. It's such a beautiful way to describe it too. I remember Joe Culinari told me that when we were doing Butterfly at Glimmerglass, and he said I'm a tether, and the tether is important because it's the connection between me, you, and then the audience, and it's all functioning via this invisible string that unites the whole thing together.
That's beautiful. I would expect a beautiful answer from Joe Culinari. He's one of the, no, seriously, because to me, he's one of the great conductors in America right now. I mean, I have nothing but the highest respect for him.
Yeah, he's an incredible person. How important is it to you for interpretation? Like, how important is the thought process behind like listening to a piece? So we're about to listen to a bunch of music you've never heard before. You're not necessarily well versed in video games at all, except for what you've maybe heard passing the street or whatever. So
listen, back in 1978, I could kill. In fact, I was conquering all the time on Frogger and Centipede. Frogger and Centipede were I want to say 78. I think my reign of dominance lasted from 78 to 81. I think.
Wow. Okay.
And when I say that, that's just with my group of friends. But I haven't played I haven't played a video game at least since 1981.
Yeah, I feel like you're probably a non-gamer.
But that's not because I think there's anything wrong with it or anything like that.
No,
It
of course not.
just hasn't crossed my buffet yet.
How important, like when we listen to these pieces of music, how important is context to you, and how important now obviously all of these pieces, fundamentally their purpose today will be to describe a scene, describe they're the hello, the verbs, the adjectives, hello, it's the adjectives.
Yeah, parts of speeches.
Yes, of the music. When we listen to this, how important is it to you to know what's going on versus like listening to the music for the sake of the music?
Well, that's a brilliant question, and so take for example film music, which of course is contextualized music, and there's some incredibly great film scores by great classical composers. One of the things that really separates film music, and obviously this would apply also to video games, presumably, is that there is a situational thing. One of the things when we analyze a great symphony, for example, whether it's a romantic symphony or whether it's a classical symphony, let's say Mozart Symphony Number 40. Everyone knows, everyone's heard da da dum da da dum da da dum da da. There is form. Because this is absolute music, and when I say absolute music, I mean that from a clinical standpoint, from a technical standpoint. We call music that is just music. It's not trying to paint a story. It's not an opera. It is just music for the sake of music. And form, that is to say, what we do with the material and how it all fits together, is so critically important in organizing the thoughts of the composer and the motivic materials and how it's dealt with. So form is a huge thing. In film, we don't have that same thing necessarily to the same extent. So you might have an incredibly glorious theme. Let's take a John Williams theme, whether it's Superman or whether it's E.T. or whatever. And that is for a moment, but it is not developed and then recapitulated with a final ending that makes a whole thing. So it's much easier, and I think more important when analyzing film music, and again, video music would make sense to me, to realize that it's serving a function. It's much more like incidental music, which is what we call in classical music, when music is written to accompany a play, for example. We call it incidental music, and that doesn't necessarily have the same kind of formal constraints that a normal classical piece of music would have. So that's a long way of saying yes. I think context is very important. So I'm not going to, so that one doesn't say, well, that piece of music, it doesn't have a recapitulation and doesn't have a development. Well, that's not what it's supposed to do. It is supposed to be is playing a function in this video, or is playing a function in the film.
Good to know. Well, in this case, I don't know the context of this. So this piece, I don't know the context.
Okay, well, that's dangerous then. So you may very well, if I'm going to analyze it and say, I don't like it because of this, or I don't like it because of that, or I do like that, it's sort of not knowing the context is a little bit disadvantageous, if that makes sense.
The only thing I like about not knowing context or going into it without context, now obviously I do think that context enhances and elevates certain things. What I like about it is the fact that it allows us to create, and it allows us to explore musically our imaginations, which I think is really important, because when we're given everything, we sometimes are not able to then extrapolate the deeper rooted like heart of the piece for ourselves. It's almost like we need to be guided, and I think like there's something to be said for no context, because this is an issue I come up with all the time. Context versus no context doesn't matter. Yes, it does, but does it? It's interesting.
Well, because good music that is appealing from one note to the next. Okay, all you need to have from in a phrase is basically two notes. Music that moves from and proceeds in time. Music that is appealing on its own is appealing on its own. You can't take that out of context. I mean you can't take that out of that vacuum and say, oh, it's not appealing because of this. I'll give you an example. I mean, you and I, we've spent a lot of time with opera. When I was a kid, I felt so. You and I did Tosca. Tosca was my favorite thing in the world growing up. Like at age 12 and 13, I would put on a recording and I would listen to me. I had no idea what was happening. I could no more speak Italian, and I didn't care to. I just knew this music was beautiful, and I knew they were singing some words. But I didn't know. At that age, the music spoke to me, and because it was great music, that had immediacy. So great music has its own advantages despite the context.
For those of you that don't know, I've really gone down the rabbit hole that is anime and manga. I've read many in the last year. So I was curious and intrigued when I was asked for a quick sponsorship of the 7 Deadly Sins Origin. Thanks PlayStation and the 7 Deadly Sins Origin for sponsoring this video. Those of you who are familiar with the anime and manga will be excited, I think, because this is actually a game that takes place between the original 7 Deadly Sins and its sequel, The Four Knights of the Apocalypse. Actually, while I was filming this, I did some research, and it's actually really cool that the 7 Deadly Sins are actually a group of 7 really bad criminals who are convicted for horrific crimes and everything that happens in between. Anyway, doesn't matter. Seems like a pretty interesting plot. So in this game, 7 Deadly Sins Origin, it actually takes place in the untold blank period between the 2 parts I mentioned before. It's actually through the perspective of Tristan and all the adventures he and the others go on in Britannia, which, by the way, is pretty cool because Britannia is fully open world and recreated from the anime. It's huge. Of course, there's lots of the cliff climbing, gliding, underwater exploration. Many of the locations from the show are recreated in high fidelity with the power of the PS5. In fact, one of the beauties of this game's exclusivity on the PS5 console is that you're getting fast loading times, the awesome enhanced haptics on the controller, which you can only get on the PS5, which obviously helps with immersion. And whether you're on base PS5 or PS5 Pro, you're gonna get ultra smooth performance, which is pretty cool. 7 Deadly Sins Origin is available now for free, and you can check it out via the link in the description of this video. Okay, well, actually, if I recall correctly, I was percolating while you're saying that, and apparently this takes place in, all right, this is a game that's based, do you know what anime is? Japanese cartoons?
Yes, I do.
This is actually it's taken the world by storm right now. It is actually a game about horse girls.
Horse girls. What does that mean? What does that mean? And has it been disallowed in Tennessee? That's all I want to know.
It's literally an anime that is based off of real world horses, but they have turned them into these young girls that are horses. I forget the term for humans that have animal features. And this is a racing game. So it's you train your horse girl. It's not very
all right. Okay.
This is why I started with this one, because this is just out of pocket if you don't understand the world.
Right. There we go.
Literally that's and so you train them, you help them get better. They become, you get attached to them because it's like you watch this girl really wants to win the race, and you can train her and help her and get her to the finish line, right?
Right.
By your commitment. But anyway, so apparently actually this track, the track is called Carrying Our Hopes and Feelings. Composed by Masume Tabuchi.
Our hopes and feelings. Okay.
Carrying Our Hopes and Feelings. And this track is actually from apparently the real life horse died. And so in this particular chapter, if I recall based on a comment I read literally just 10 minutes ago, this is sort of the game basically celebrating that horse's life and showcasing, the will to live and the will to carry on. Thoughts?
Well, that impressed me in many ways. First of all, I think it's well composed from a harmonic movement, from a part writing standpoint. I love the use of first inversion chords frequently. I was wondering if it was ever going to modulate. I thought it was going to be okay. We're going to stay in the same key and that's perfectly fine. And that wasn't a negative. But then I realized, this is extended, and so this it really does start to make development. What we look for in a classical piece of music is how you develop these thematic things that I was talking about before, and then the way it did that was by doing increasingly, going up a step and modulating upwards, and use that opportunity to have an almost improvisatory kind of nature. Yeah. You have the piano doing its riffs and all that kind of stuff, and the fast strings with 16th notes. And so someone took their job seriously when composing this piece. And from an orchestration standpoint, I mean, through everything, but the kitchen sink. But tastefully, but very tastefully. And I think, you said, so this horse that has died, and we're looking back on its life, you certainly sense a kind of nobility, the way it opens, and with the the very soft stuff, but then with the depth of the low percussion, you sort of sense a degree of importance to this horse that died. I think effective. I mean, again, not knowing the game, I think effective. Now, just in terms of do I think it's great music? No, I don't think it's great music from the standpoint of but I think it serves its purpose brilliantly, which is a degree of greatness. That's one of the things we do. The main material, these closed phrases that is the song itself before we start that development. It's sort of a quasi-classical, almost poppy kind of feel with the suspensions and fairly predictable. But there's nothing wrong with that. What I would say is that I am pleasantly surprised to the degree that I find it appealing, and I find it. What's the other right way? It's completely inoffensive. Now that sounds snooty, but you know what I mean. There's some music that tries way too hard, and I'd love to see this in context, and all that. But hey, it's not bad at all. It is not bad at all.
Is that a piece that you felt had an emotional impetus and had
of course, yeah. I mean, come on, you could if someone were playing that for you. Now you know that this kind of stuff exists in the video world, but the average person like me, who is not a video person, I would think, that's film music. Okay, that's a film music. It sounds very much like film, but it's good. I mean, it's good. You can tell that this person is a who composed it. Who did you say composed it? A Japanese composer, right?
Natsumi Tabuchi.
Well constructed and imaginative. I give it a thumbs up.
Okay, perfect. We're going to pivot in a very distinctly opposite direction now, just to give you some whiplash. I think it's healthy for you. It keeps you fresh. This is from a game called Guilty Gear Strive, which is a fighting game. Do you know what a fighting game is?
So a fighting game. I mean, that's what lots of video games are, right? You're out to...
Street Fighter? You ever heard of Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat?
Heard of it, yeah. Of course, I've heard of all that. Okay. Oh, my Lord. Right. And I've heard music from Mortal Kombat.
Have you?
Yeah, well, when they do advertisements. I mean, I'll be watching I'll be doing a football game, and the new version of Mortal Kombat, 95 comes out or whatever. and sometimes the music they play is just like, oh my... Unbelievable.
Oh my Lord.
yeah, exactly.
Well, so this is from
go ahead.
This is from a game called Guilty Gear Strive. It's been around for not this particular version, but there's many iterations, like the Mortal Kombat or the Street Fighters. This is actually in an anime style. It's in a 2D style. This is a character called Slayer, and Slayer is a vampire. He doesn't age.
Yes.
And he's a dandy.
He slays. And he's the one who slays.
He's a dandy. So everything he does is, he's got his 3-piece suit on. He's very, he's very proper. He's got a debonair, very handsome. Yeah, exactly. So this is his theme, actually, Ups and Downs. Look how suave he is.
Precious things, the heart turns into stone, hardly stop. Bedtime story, happy ending game, just a snapshot in time. Life is a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the ride without sound downs. Precious things, my heart turns into stone, hardly to stop. Bedtime story, happy ending, it's just a snapshot in time. Life is a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the ride without down downs. Bedtime story. Sometimes you have to play supporting role, but what matters is that your eyes shine in the moment. Hardly stop a bedtime story. Happy ending, you just a snapshot in time. Life is a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the ride with ups and downs.
How was that? Was that good?
No. No. I'm not saying it doesn't work for the context.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how he's debonair and he's kind of a dandy. I think sort of the kind of a hard rocky beat along with the jazz.
Yeah.
I think that's all good choice. I think it probably is spot on. It probably is spot on for this character, which is what it's supposed to be, right? When I say no, I'm just saying, would I ever want to listen to this on purpose? The answer is no. So I don't. I'll tell you for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's not style of music that I like very much.
Yeah.
It doesn't appeal to me. It's always in the same key. It just drives and drives and drives and drives and drives. Now, we talked about that before. I mean, that serves a purpose for the game. But I can't imagine listening to it. Oh, let me turn on that. I want to hear that. I wouldn't do that. I will say that the most imaginative aspects of it are when it moves to the jazz, like what I thought was going to be a B section. Then I realized that once it started that, it kind of kept it. You don't hear that for the first little bit. Is it boom, 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 all that stuff at the beginning that it just reaches out and just like punches you in the face. That has its purpose, right? That's who this guy is. But in terms of whether I would want to listen to it, but that's kind of not really the point. I think it's well crafted. I think it's whoever wrote this. It sounds like it's probably a I don't know if you've got that information, but it sounds like this was a group effort.
It most certainly is. Yeah, it is.
But which is fine. So there's a high degree of intelligence and sophistication with it. Despite what I'm saying about it, there's sophistication about how it integrates, different styles into the thing, and apparently is a good representation of this guy. I guess the thing that doesn't appeal to me is just the whole concept. Anyway, I mean the whole idea of fighting, the guys out there kicking and slaying, and okay, that to me has a limited appeal, which is why the music that fits to it has a limited appeal. But totally. But well executed. I think that and this is one of the things I often don't love so much about pop music vocalists is that they don't enunciate as well as they otherwise could. I mean, just if they would just take just a split second to think about how they're pronouncing things, I felt like some of it was overly stylized and not as clear as it could be. I mean, we had the words up there so I could see them. I thought it was pretty interesting when he goes surrounded, boom, and then we had that black by precious things. All right, that's sophisticated. That's pretty cool. So just in terms of would I ever purposely listen to this? The answer is a hard no. Do I think it's good for its purpose? The answer is yes, probably.
Do you feel like this is better than radio music? Like the stuff you would turn on like a radio station? And maybe better is not the right
you mean you're just talking about the top 40 or whatever kind of thing?
Yeah, because you had mentioned that you don't necessarily love pop, and it's like, well, is this somewhat different than that?
Well, right, because you wouldn't call this pop, right? You'd call this
no, of course,
very very specific. Better. That's a value judgment. Yeah, probably better, but pop songs have a different purpose. Pop songs are designed to be popular, and to make to have an appeal that goes. Yeah. This would only be so popular, I can imagine, if this were put out, because it only does so much. Although it would have a niche following. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I like I say, I'm not well versed in pop music. When I hear something brand new that's a pop song that comes on, there's so much that goes into it. It's not just the content of the music, but it's the performance. This is one of the reasons why Christmas, when it come around to Christmas, and all of a sudden you hear Christmas songs on the radio and everywhere you go, it's one of my least favorite times of the year because despite the fact that you're hearing a beautiful song like "Oh Holy Night," the content of which and the musical quality of the song is wonderful, you're hearing some person that should never even approach trying to sing Oh Holy Night, but because that person is a pop singer, they feel like they have to do this, and it's horrifying. It is absolutely horrifying, and you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Of course I do.
And so so that's the thing. With pop music, there's the content of the piece of music, often written by someone other than the performer.
Right.
Okay. And then there is the performance. And every now and then you'll have something that really works on all ends. So I don't want to come across as the snob that I really am.
I don't think that's snobby.
Yeah. But you know what I mean, though, right?
I do.
You know what I mean. And so that's the same thing that's the same thing when I listen to pop music. But it's not the way I would listen. It's not different from how I would listen to an opera. I just listened to some tracks of something the other day of some of the greatest music ever written, performed terribly by this particular singer. But this particular singer's out there, making money on, Decca Records. So anyway, it doesn't change whether it's pop music, whether it's classical music, or whether it's this. Everything deserves to be executed as well as possible.
Yeah.
That's how it'll speak. That's how it speaks the most effectively.
And that's such a fair statement to make, because I think ultimately what I feel like you're doing, which I really appreciate, is that you're taking this at the same level as something, a classical piece, let's say, and measuring it by its merit, and also like subdividing it into different subsections of like, does it work for me? No. Does it work for the piece? Probably. Does it sound good? Is it sophisticated? Like, these are all things that sometimes in modern conversations when we talk about music, especially in certain circles, it's like, well, it's trash, or it's mid, or it's average. And it's like, well, no, you can't just dislike something, or you can't there are layers to, like, there's a soundtrack that I'm going to play you an excerpt from soon. I don't really like the soundtrack. And I've been sitting with why, and I want to make a video about it, but I know that it will be met with dissent because it's a widely popular, appealing game that I personally just don't attach myself to. But I'm not sitting here saying it's trash, it's awful, the whole thing is bad, it feels like it's posturing and faking it. You know what I mean? For me, it's like, okay, why don't I like this? Why do I like this? And I think like what you're saying is great because you're measuring this to, music is music, right? At the end of the day.
Certainly. I mean, music is music. And you know what, the definition of music, that I like is it comes from the old Harvard Dictionary of Music and Musicians, years and years ago. And it is, let me think of it real quick. The purposeful flow of sound through time.
Wow.
So, for example, if I accidentally drop my pencil, I don't know if you could hear that or not. But if I accidentally, I'm not going to throw this down. But if I
heard the pencil. Yeah.
But if I accidentally drop it, then that's not music. But if I do this, 1, 2, 3, boom, that was purposeful. That was a purposeful sound that I made. At the most basic level, that is what music is. The purposeful making of sound as it flows through time. And so we could have a whole other thing we talk about that we could do it. But basically that's what we're talking about. What is music, and does it serve a purpose, or is it music for its own sake? We could have thousands of discussions about all this stuff. But when it comes to what we're doing right now, I think context is so very important. I mean, I would not choose to play this video game. And if I were choosing to play it, I would try to see if I could find a way to turn that music down because it's relentlessly loud. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't serve the high adrenaline aspect that of its intention.
Well, perfect. Let's pivot way back to 1990.
1990.
So we're getting close to your heyday, where with the asteroid and the and the centipede.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to play this, actually from a game, Pictionary.
I like Pictionary.
This was the video game of Pictionary on the Nintendo.
I didn't know there was a video game.
Yeah,
of Pictionary.
I know.
I just played it with my nieces some few weeks ago.
Oh, did you?
Yes. This
is from the Follin brothers, or I believe Tim Follin. So obviously at the time there were limited ways to produce music, and a lot of it was based on channels and systems, and it was very much the beeps and boops that we've come to video games are associated with.
Yes.
The Follin brothers really felt that they wanted to push the envelope. This was a time period of a lot of repeats, a lot of repetition, a lot of small 1 minute sort of 30-second loops that then continue to loop. It was very much the purpose of it was background music. But in Pictionary and in many other games that they've worked on, this is the title screen theme, and you'll find that this actually continues. So this is a total departure from the last two tracks we've heard, but I'm curious to hear what your feelings are on this. I don't really know the context. I mean, it's Pictionary, but
Yeah. We'll let it paint a picture.
Yeah, we'll let it paint a picture.
time.
Is that crazy?
So I can just imagine, you're sitting there, I'm obviously you're doing it on video, but I mean, you're trying to do a picture and then the hourglass is running out, and then and you can sort of tell by the way the music comes to it. That means, all right. So if I mentioned the name Ray Lynch to you, does that have any meaning?
No.
Ray Lynch put out an album called Deep Breakfast. Have you ever heard of Deep Breakfast?
Yes. This is someone just talked to me about this.
I was in my youth, back about this time, I was so into Ray Lynch and Deep Breakfast, and this piece called Tiny Geometries was one of the most thrilling things that I ever knew. And so what this music reminded me of that you just played is, and it's just electronic music. Okay. It's electronic. And, this piece reminded me a little bit of Ray Lynch and that kind of electronic music that was so newish at that point. This had more of a rock beat to it and all of that kind of stuff. So I find it doesn't appeal to me quite as much. But again, so so you're listening to this, all that stuff. I can only imagine. So it is heightening the sense of, man, I got to get this picture drawn and she's got to guess what it is, before the time runs out. And so it serves a purpose, I think, not only to have that background, but also to annoy you and make your job more difficult. Put it this way, I don't think that music is going to assist you to do a better job at drawing whatever you're supposed to be drawing. I think it's there, kind of to annoy the living daylights out of you and make it frustrate you.
Well, but this is actually the title screen. So this is like what you hear when you start the game.
Oh, is it? Okay.
To me, main menu themes or main menu music really it sets the stage, kind of like an overture where it's like, this is the game, baby. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, I think obviously it's not compared, but the Mozart, Nozze overture or something like this is what you're in for.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, I mean, it certainly drives and it's certainly fairly relentless, and so if this is the main thing, you probably wouldn't linger on it long, right? You get it. You do it and then you get into it. So I think it's interesting. I mean, I tell you one thing I am discovering. This is the third thing you played. There's a high degree of sophistication with all this stuff. Not necessarily sophistication in outcome. That is to say, it's not like we're trying to give people profound thoughts or profound anything. But there's a degree of sophistication at doing it to serve the purpose that we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes. It's not poorly written.
Correct. It's not. There's nothing poorly. Yeah. All three of these things are not. None of them are poorly written. They and I think that they have very specific purposes. Very specific purposes.
Yeah. I've had other guests on that have said that this actually to them feels like most akin to what they wish that video game music would sound like. I suppose, do beeps and boops have a negative connotation? In the pursuit of legitimizing this music so that it can reach a broader, wider sort of evangelizing the music of video game music. Does this appeal? Appeal's the wrong word, but does this feel as legitimate to you as maybe the other two pieces in terms of the I mean, I think this doesn't feel less legitimate. Okay. I mean, to me, big orchestral scores. I mean, you have to, when you're dealing with a big orchestral score and you're and this with this medium. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of trying to take something that is potentially profound. All right, with any connotation of orchestra, let's say the orchestral connotation, which is potentially comparatively profound, right? And
then putting it with a video game. All right, I think that is a balancing act that I think takes real skill, and not just from a compositional standpoint, but it takes aesthetic wisdom, right. If that makes sense.
It does. Yeah.
And I would say that with this electronic stuff. Doesn't take any less skill necessarily, but you've got a built-in association. You're dealing with two electronic mediums, electronic music and the electronics of the video. So in that sense, the two have they're already at the same point of view, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But you can certainly have bad electronic music, and you can certainly have great electronic music. I'm dead serious, Marco. I want you to find tiny geometries.
I have it right here. I have Deep Breakfast. I'll play it when we're off the call.
Tiny geometries is one of the most thrilling things. I mean, you get the beeps and boosts, but you also have sweep to it. And you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Cool.
Electronic music to me is not lesser music. I mean, it's. I wish I knew more about it. I wish I knew how to do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, I wish it's so complicated. You know, people ask me, what music do you listen to? I mean, I listen almost exclusively to classical music when I listen to music. I don't listen to music randomly as much as I did in my youth, because I'm always working on specific things.
A new thing, yeah, right.
But my favorite thing to listen to is, for lack of better terminology, and forgive my language here, but space music, electronic ambient music. I mean, Steve Roach is one of my heroes. Steve Roach is a hero of mine, and his quiet music, it's called quiet music, and it's profound music. Much of it is profound. Am I comparing it to Mahler? Am I comparing it to Mozart and Beethoven? There's no reason to have to do that. That's sort of the thing that I think that I like what you're doing. You don't have to compare. You don't have to say, is Mozart better than such and such? Well, yes, Mozart's better than almost anything that's ever existed on the planet, but that's not the point, you know?
Right.
And so this particular thing that we just listened to, I'm sure I'm sure it served its purpose very, very well. And it was sophisticated enough.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. Speaking of ambient, there's a track, so The Witcher 3, it's actually based off of a book by Andrzej Sapkowski, The Witcher series. You know, it's about I don't know if you've seen
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it. They made movies, right? Yeah.
They made, a TV show on Netflix, and books were the originals. And then the games, this is out of Poland. The Witcher 3, was a phenomenon. It really changed the way that we approach storytelling. So this game is an open world, which means you can kind of go anywhere. It's a very high fantasy. You ride a horse. You play this character named Geralt of Rivia. Geralt is a witcher. They have been genetically modified from youth. They're castrated, or no, they're not castrated.
Ouch.
Sorry, that's not castrated. Sorry, they're neutered. They have to take all these tonics, and their eyes change. And anyway, they're demon hunters, if you will. They monster killers, whatever. And so one of the areas you go to in The Witcher 3 is this beautiful mountainous, it's hard to describe like a real world place that would be based off of, it's called Skellig. But this track is the fields of Skellig. It's very much something you would hear in the background while roaming on your horse Roach. Very ethereal and stuff. So let's check it out. Hold on one second. Okay. And from that picture, you got to get the idea of what the landscape is.
So we got a Celtic thing going on all immediately.
A bit. But it's more Eastern European.
Got it. Well, that's very atmospheric, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you that it seemed kind of cliche to me. Not that that's necessarily bad. And in context here, to me, it was not great music. One of the things I found distracting was that the viola was out of tune. And so I know that sounds crazy, but particularly in the opening phrases, it seemed like it was, and then and it corrected itself a little bit, and then towards the end, it got back out of tune. And okay, I'm just being no, because it would have improved the impression had it been. And then the other thing that I find annoying often is when we have instances like this where you put vocals into things where there's supposed to be an authentic kind of quality to all of this, but then we put vocals in that are sung in a poppy kind of way. That to me is so incredibly inauthentic. I don't mean it should have been sung like an opera. I don't mean that. But I found the singing to be very mediocre. Am I saying the music is bad? Not at all. I'm saying the performance is not. It does not give the music to be as optimally effective as it otherwise could be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, of course.
That's my main impression. I mean, I think that from an atmospheric standpoint, the context of the music with this, this beautiful. But listen, I mean, there could be so many better things that would do this. I mean, the opportunity to create music to accompany a landscape like this or a fantasy like that. Oh my Lord, the opportunity is huge. I found this to be sort of a low budget effort.
Huh. That's very interesting. Well, I appreciate that insight.
But I mean, but seriously, to me, it's the performance that got in the way the most.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. See, I love how nuanced you are, and I feel that I am nuanced, but
of course you are.
But you have like 40 years experience nuance. It's slightly different.
Rub it in, my son. Rub it in.
It's slightly different. You know what I mean? The things that you're pointing out to me, I'm like, oh, what a lovely atmospheric piece. You're like walking around on your horse, but then you're like, yeah, but actually, and I actually think that's great. I find that very intriguing to listen to. You know what I mean?
Well, this is one of the things that when people find certain things wonderful, that's fantastic. I love it when people find a piece of music that they think is marvelous and it means something to them. What I oftentimes know is if you like that, you will like something else 10 times even more. You just don't know it yet.
Right.
Of course, I'm the same way as well. I mean, with all kinds of things. Occasionally, even with music, I don't know all great music. I don't know all classical music. I don't, by any stretch of imagination. That's the great thing about art. That's the great thing about music. It's infinite. And we can't know everything. We can't even have experienced everything. I'm always, the older I get, I'm often looking for opportunities to learn music that is new to me, that is great, that I haven't known before. And so that's someone who spends my entire life is music. For people who approach music more casually, I'm always thrilled when there's any appreciation of good music. I love it, and I try to build on it. So, for example, I mean, this is near and dear to your heart. People who love the three tenors. Okay, if they love the three tenors and that brings them to opera, I can't wait for them to hear the real thing. You know what I mean? But it's an opening. It's an opening.
1,000,000%.
So anyway,
well,
that's my thought.
No, I mean, I love that. And one of the things that I take a lot of pride in is the people because I'm not trying to convert people to loving classical music. I'm not trying to convert you to love video games. What I'm trying to do is be like, hey, this exists. It's interesting. It's here and available, 40 plus years of history. And what I love is that people, because of being within and around, over 100 million views now, if I do say so myself, there's a broader range than I ever could have reached as an opera singer that I've been able to reach on this platform. And what's amazing is that people have told me, hey, we're going to see an opera. Salome's playing. Should I go? Wow. And I'm like, yes, you should go. It's going to be weird as a first opera, but you may love it, I saw Barber of Seville. I saw La Traviata at my local. I didn't even think about the Opera House. I don't care if they go or not, but what matters is that maybe their mind is open to the possibility of what exists. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's the only thing I'm really looking to do.
And I am always, and this is the thing, in some ways, in many ways, I'm way too close to it. So the first thing that happens when you say someone's going to go see Salome for the first time, my thought is, number one, fantastic. Number two, darn, I'm really worried that it's not going to be a great performance, because a bad performance of Salome could turn them off forever. You know what I mean? And so there's just such an incredible side to all of this music. I mean, and none of it exists in a vacuum. People have to conceive music, people have to execute music, people have to hear the music. There's all of that exists, almost simultaneously in terms of the real. There's so much great music that never got penned. We don't know. Exactly. Music exists in music is part of nature. Music is part of nature. And I think it's, to me, it's also very much like a drug. There are drugs that will save your lives. There are drugs that will kill you. Music is not dissimilar. There's music that will save your life, and there's music, I think, that will take you in a wrong direction. So I don't want to get into the morality of music and morality of art. And I mean that in a very broad sense.
No, I understand.
So anyway, I love what you're doing with this.
I appreciate that. So 2 games came out long ago, Castlevania and Metroid. Eventually, those concepts of a game, basically gaining abilities, exploring a world. It's usually 2D, not 3D. And this particular game was handmade by 3 people. It's a cartoonish element, but it has some really deep and wonderful music. It's a very reflective story on, like, an era long gone, the end of kings and queens, and who identity, and like what it means to be the last of the surviving of your people, and so on and so forth. It's a very thoughtful game. And this particular track is when you go down into this area and you fight these Mantis Lords. And the Mantis Lords, everything is a bug, by the way. So the Mantis Lords are praying mantis enemies, and you have to learn their patterns, learn how they fight. And you'll notice, well, I'm going to let you decipher what you think. But so, we hear the term Mantis Lords. The brain kind of starts to jumpstart. But here we go. I'll play this for you.
Wow. That's the best thing we've heard so far.
I love the harpsichord use there. It's really cool.
It seems to be the most, has the most musical integrity. So it starts, the whole thing has a Baroque vibe. So it sounds very much, not dissimilar to Vivaldi and Bach, who, Bach riffed off of Vivaldi all the time, by the way, and transcribed Vivaldi concertos himself into harpsichord concertos. But this sounds a little bit like the D minor harpsichord concerto, but also with the same kind of rhythmic vitality and harmonic language of Vivaldi. But then it also has a 20th century flair to it, which is, immediate from the beginning, some even Stravinsky rhythmic stuff. It has this quality that we talk about oftentimes with German Baroque music. Not just German Baroque music, but Baroque music with a German term, Fortspinnung, which is to say the motives just keep going forward. It's just spinning forward, it's just going like that. And so that's some sophisticated stuff right there, I think. Almost in a standalone kind of way.
Yeah, I think so. I could hear that being played in a symphonic performance. No problem.
Yeah, you'd have to have a good string orchestra, but the thing is, it has enough. It's not so complicated as to be that would. To me, it would have a lot of people would like the music that aren't necessarily classical music people. So it sort of bridges that gap. And you find that a lot with with Baroque style music. I mean, that's why Baroque music is what they play on classical radio stations more than anything else. And
very palatable.
And the chord progressions of Baroque music. We hadn't gotten to Wagner yet, and they're not necessarily, and so oftentimes you'll find a lot of pop music that has the same chord progressions as Baroque music. That to me is smack dab in the middle. Okay, we want to write something that is complicated, but it's appealing. That's just that people will like. They won't know why they like it, but they're going to like it. But it's also sophisticated. That takes a degree of skill in order to perform. That's what that is.
And it's fun because that's literally like the theme for these enemies, these bosses they're called, these difficult, challenging enemies. So like if someone's really struggling, they may hear this song 5, 10, 15 times. And it's amazing how that earworm sort of gets embedded in you. And then here's a whole generation of players who are being exposed to, Baroque music without even realizing it. And then it's like, oh, Bach. I heard that. Yeah. I heard that on the radio. That reminds me of Hollow Knight, the Mantis Lords, and suddenly there's the connection, and you don't even have to. You just kind of watch it happen.
Yeah,
it's an amazing
exactly.
thing. Do you want to hear like a fusion, like EDM meets organ?
Listen, I will. I want you to do what you want to do, my man.
You're just along for the ride. That's fine.
I love it. I'm enjoying this tremendously.
I really like organ a lot, and
you're talking about organ music.
Yes, organ music. And in video games, organ music typically is obviously associated with large things, the church. There's a antichrist, anti-religion. There's two pieces that are diametrically opposed. But what I like about video game music is that we are able to combine, sometimes mix and match genres. This may not be to your liking, but it's certainly to mine. So I'm going to force you to listen to it.
All right, force away. It's your show, brother. It's your show.
This is called Martyr, and it's from a game called Arknights. To be honest, I don't know the context. I just really like the music. China has a very big mobile presence, mobile games. They also host yearly concerts of their music. And I think it was last year's concert that I watched. No, this is packed. This is like in the Chinese theater, like an amphitheater, like not amphitheater, excuse me, like a stadium size thing. And it's sold out. And it's all like, again, I don't know. I'm not trying to showcase a lot of anime today, but it's just how it's happening. But the characters will pop up on the screen and they're like, and it's like, it's absurd. It's not something that I would ever think that would be even remotely interesting, but it's massively popular. Cool. So yeah, I really like this because EDM is really fun to me. My fiance loves EDM, so I've been exposed.
Tell me about EDM. Tell me what EDM is.
Electronic music, like a heavy beat. It's a very almost like a sensory body experience where you're kind of just like dum 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 dum.
So like E stands for electronic.
Electronic dance music.
Electronic dance music. Got it. You expanded my vocabulary. All right. EDM is electronic dance music. Everybody dance now.
call? Thoughts?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I can see why you like it. I like it too. In certain respects. I mean, it's simple. Harmonically, it's very simple.
Yeah.
1 1 1 1 7 7 7 7 5 5 7 7 1 1 1 1 4 4 4 4 5 5 5 5 1. All right. Hey, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it, because apart from the musical content itself, the organ, and then the electronic business going on, those are the atmospheric aspects. And you know what it reminds me of? I mean, I thought about this, 10 seconds into the thing. So, and I don't know if you ever sang it. Did you ever sing Faust? Did you ever sing Gounod's Faust?
I role studied it. I never sang it.
Yeah, well, I did it at AVA, your old stomping grounds.
Oh, God.
God bless. We'll talk about. I'm loving my experience at AVA, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
In the scene in the church.
Oh, Act 3.
This great church scene. Okay, and you have the organ.
Yeah.
Okay, you have the organ. Yes,
yeah.
But you have the organ playing different music, but not dissimilar in terms of atmosphere and sound. So you have this sacred kind of environment, sacred and ominous at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then penetrating that sacred environment are the words of Satan himself.
Yeah.
Mephistopheles comes in here into the church where he has no business being in the damn church.
It's my favorite scene in Faust.
It's so unbelievable. But this is not dissimilar. I mean, so when I hear to me, that's like, okay, that is some kind of alien element into this atmospheric and sound palette with its sacred connotations. And then you've got this thing that in a certain sense is alien to that. But the two of them together work in the same way that in Faust it works. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, 1,000,000%. Actually, while we're here, let me show you another example that's somewhat different. But yes, 1,000,000%. And it's funny you brought up Faust Act 3, because Faust Act 3, and for anybody that's watching and is curious, Faust Act 3, oh my gosh. So obviously there's a journey that Marguerite goes on, and she arrives at the church, and she's begging God for forgiveness. And instead what she gets is the voice of Satan.
Yes.
Just like, oh God.
It's
this
incredible.
is called Shadowlord. And Shadowlord is from a game called Nier Gestalt. And it's very complicated to explain this, but essentially this is the theme of Shadowlord, if you will. It's a different kind of structure, but just for the sake of it. So the first video I ever did on this channel was a strophic song called Kindness Salvation with a now friend Emmy Evans, and this is all something called the Chaos language. And the Chaos language is a mixture that Emmy created, is a mixture of many different Romance languages and English and Germanic sound styles combined. And so there are several songs. There's one song called Voice of No Return that literally sounds like a French chanson, but it's like pseudo gibberish, even though it's French. So you're like, what? You're like, I know she sang. For 4 years when I was at AVA, I used to have this playing on my PlayStation in the background, not this particular track, but another one. And for 4 years, I didn't know what she was saying. And I was like, there's something wrong with me. I don't understand the lyrics. Come to find out, it's the Chaos language. And what I find amazing about the Chaos language is that it removes the necessity to understand. because the chaos language is it's its own thing, and you don't. There's no one knows what it means, but you as a listener and as a gameplay experiencer have to decipher for yourself. And I think, actually, before we listen to this, Stephen, I'd love for you to sort of extrapolate on this, because I feel like a lot of people, the barrier for so many of us is the lack of understanding of the words. And I know you mentioned when you were 11 and 12 listening to Tosca, who cares what the words are? But don't you find that there's still a degree of a barrier?
Of course there is, but I also find that barrier with so much of the unintelligibility of pop songs. I mean, and so I mean, a lot of people. I've seen so many people. My favorite song is such and such, and I thought for years that he was saying this, and then I found out he was saying that. I mean, anytime you have words, so like the one that we played before, the Witcher thing. I want to know: are those nonsense syllables that they're singing? Is that a part Romanian, Hungarian, Estonian? What is that? Or is that a Celt? What is that language? Because the human voice, always you bring in an element, unless you are very clearly singing an ah or very specifically doing something. But anytime you speak syllables, or what are perceived to be words, we as listeners cry out to want to know what the meaning of that is. So when I go back and say, I loved Tosca growing up, not knowing what it means, I love it a lot more now that I do know what it means. Okay.
Yeah. Which is the power of context too.
So knowing, the more knowledge, the more specificity you can get. I mean, we can listen to Madame Butterfly and just be all choked up because of the power of the music but when you know exactly what she is saying at the very end, when she's getting ready to kill herself and abandon her child, and it becomes overwhelming. So it doesn't matter. Yes. I mean, I think we want to understand what people are saying, whether it's in an opera, whether it's in a video game, or whether it's on the street of, a city in Morocco. We want to know what people are saying. Yeah. If they're doing that.
Truly. You bring up a great point. When my last gig, I was singing a Macbeth in France. I was in Limoges, Massy-en-Rance, and I remember the ostracization of not being able to speak French in that moment. And thankfully I had a colleague who spoke Italian, and Robert Tui, who's actually been on the show several times. He's a conductor from Buffalo, New York, of all places, who just happens to live in Paris, and he's doing his thing. And so we were able to give notes and things in English, but it was a really challenging experience to be in an environment where no one spoke the language, and I had to eventually learn to speak at least some degree of French, so that communication is so important. And it's interesting how in any of these mediums, ultimately it's an exchanging of ideas and thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. And as musicians, we're somewhat lucky in that there is a universal language that everyone understands. You might not speak a word of Japanese, but we all know what allegro means, And so because we have this universal language of musical terms, many of which are French, most of which are Italian, but also German and French, and so we're able to get along. I've had to conduct rehearsals with orchestras where I wasn't necessarily fluent. This is, for example, when I was conducting and making a recording in Slovakia. I wasn't good at the language, but I was able to get along a little bit in German. But in the rehearsals, never a problem, because I only use musical terminology, and so as musicians, we're lucky with that. But can you imagine if you're a plumber and you've been dropped down into a city in Slovakia, and you have to go to work, and you don't know how to say a pipe. I just can't imagine it. But anyway.
Yeah.
But I digress.
No, I digress, actually. Let's listen to Shadowlord here.
Well, so I mean, the first thing I wanted, I just looking at this and looking at the word, so the Nier replicant. I mean, so there's got to be meaning. There's got to be meaning in this. I mean, so first of all, nie meaning never, auf Deutsch, and then Kant, so replicant, and the fact that the C is capitalized, and Kant being singing, and then the replicant singing again. I would love to know what all the hidden meanings in are just in the name. Same with the Nier Gestalt. I mean, I'd love to know what all that means.
There's a lot, and actually this one and then the sequel, Nier Automata. Nier Automata is about androids and what it means to be human and all this other stuff. But you have to play through it 5 times. It's funny enough. So you play one time through one perspective, play it the second time through a different perspective, play it the third time through a different perspective that was an antagonistic perspective from them. And then at the very end of it, you decide to delete your save file and help someone else and pass it on to somebody else. It's very interesting. So, because in games you save your progress and where you start and whatever. So it's amazing how like the games are very, I don't think esoteric is the right word, but they're very heady and thoughtful, and there's a lot that goes into, they're insanely popular.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, so the music, which is what we're talking about, it's simple but not unsophisticated, sacred choral music, like a,
exactly,
and, replete with, kind of liturgical overtones, and then Rachmaninoff like harmonic sequence there when it goes to the B side, da dee da dee ha ha ha, that kind of thing. Partly because of the non-language, the chaos language or something. And in the execution of it, there seems to be almost in other words, it's not operatic singing. It's not Robert Shaw, the Robert Shaw chorale singing this at all. It really sounds almost like a group of not folk singers so much, but not a highly trained singing, but very heartfelt singing.
There's a purity in it.
Exactly. In other words, it sounds like it almost could come from an actual liturgical service of some kind with actual participants, and well done in that regard. So that was a style thing, not a criticism. Then when we get to all the adding in of all the other stuff, midway through, it takes on a completely different bent, while the choral music is going on unaltered, over top, adding all the drums and organ and everything else. I mean, it's kind of cool, I suppose. It would have to have specific meaning, I would imagine. I mean, obviously, in the context of the game, the stakes have gotten heightened or something along those lines.
There's a conflict there that tips in. I only really just wanted to showcase that, to show you the way that the organ can be used in these contexts, this sort of like whatever the contexts are, to show the ins and outs of antichrist or anti-religion or or like the sacred being corrupted by whatever. It's fascinating.
For your listeners and viewers that might be interested, and they like this the organ and the context of it, I would highly recommend that they get to know the Poulenc organ concerto. What a great piece that is for strings, organ, and timpani. I mean, it's really great. You'd love it too, Marco, if you don't know it.
I don't know it.
It's one of the great pieces, but from an atmospheric standpoint, with strings and organ and timpani, it's pretty great. I love. There's nothing I'd rather do than talk about music except make music. And if I can't make it, then I'm going to talk about it.
Well, but that's why I wake up every day. I also get to make money playing video games. Like, how awesome is that? But on the flip side, it's like I get to think about ways to engage people in conversations about music. And the thing is, the amazing thing about video games is that a lot of stuff is getting lost to time because of how, this week alone, 8 video games came out that I'm interested in playing. So how am I supposed to go back and listen to something from 30 years ago or 20 years ago that still has merit and is still good and it's still interesting? I mean, we run into the conversation all the time when we talk about we're only performing the top 10 greatest operas of all time, but what happens to all the other stuff? Doesn't automatically mean it's crap. You know what I mean? So there's, but the issue is money, what's trending, what's, how you bring in, all these factors. It's so interesting. The conversation.
I didn't realize until, I don't know, several years ago. It's been going on for a while, I suppose. That symphony concerts now include entire concerts of video game music.
It's
huge. That's been going on for a long time. And my first thing out of the box was, I had a what you would expect from from me, which is to say a classical musician who doesn't know anything about it. My first thing out of the box was, how rewarding must that be? Not knowing any of the music. Just making the assumption that it was that it couldn't possibly be artistically fulfilling, and I know now that that's not necessarily the case. There are all kinds of classical pieces that I find unartistic. I don't find artistically fulfilling. Trust me. So it's amazing. It's amazing. Music is music, as we keep saying.
If you ever got the chance, I don't want to speak for you, but I would highly encourage the opportunity. Now, obviously, these are like, a lot of these concerts are fueled and funneled by like programs, and like there's organizers and all that other stuff. But I remember I went to DC and there was a concert called Game On, and they did like the best hits of like whatever. A lot of the stuff we're doing now. Essentially, what I'm doing here is curating a concert experience for you, of course, in our home. But like one of the most amazing things is these concerts. What I tell you, they are packed.
Oh, I can imagine.
Not only are they packed, but they are, the children's concerts you do where it's like, haha, wow.
Of course.
This is like with grown adults, and the exhilaration in a concert for video game music is preposterous. It's like, I get nervous going to them because the energy is so voracious and there's so much excitement. And I don't remember. I can't even think of the last time. I'm sure there have been plenty of performances that happen at the Met, or, that are a new thing or whatever, or like a new singer, or, but there's an electricity in these video game concerts. That's just like,
well, they have different purposes, they have different, I don't know that, that electricity is the same kind of thing that, you necessarily want as a response from, Tosca or or marriage. In other words, it speaks to different parts of the persona.
As it should, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it just so happens that at a video concert like that, everyone sort of is there. They're all like-minded in terms of loving the stuff and the thrill of the game. And it's just, I can imagine it's cool. I've never been to a rock concert in my life. I use the word rock concert as if, as if that were pejorative. I don't mean it that way. I've just never been to one. I've never been to one, but every time I see people come, and the energy of these places, these people just screaming and hollering, and everyone connecting on a certain level, even if it's like a throwback concert. Oh, back an 80s concert. You filled with the same kind of people that have all these memories. Everything serves a purpose that is distinct, from other types of things.
It's a really interesting point too, because let's say someone grew up with their parents, grew up listening to Bohème, and then the first moment they get to see Bohème, or they go back when they're 70 years old and they go and see Bohème, and it has that same sort of like connection to them through their family, and that same sort of, ultimately the compositional qualities of music. But furthermore, it's also like and one of the things I really harp on here is the emotional integrity of these experiences. It's seismic. Really,
yes.
It's a colossally important part of and I think this is something that a lot of people sleep on, at least in this particular niche, is that like video game music is essential to the story. In a lot of ways, I think video game music is actually not similar. I think video games are modern operas without all the singing. So not operas at all. But in the sense that we need music to enhance and deliver the emotional integrity of the piece.
It heightens the drama. It heightens the drama.
Which is no different than opera, ultimately.
Yeah, take the last thing you played. So we get to that second part where the percussion and the rhythm and the organ start to kick up. Suddenly, that drama has changed.
Right.
It has heightened it, or it has certainly shifted. And regardless of what's going on in the game, I have no idea. But the music certainly supports that.
The impetus of it, yeah. Speaking of classical music, a game came out called Chiaroscuro. This music has really taken the world by storm. It was number one on the Billboard charts for classical music in, I believe, May, or it was certainly in the top 15. I can't remember exactly, but it went from top 15 to 1, and then it stayed there for however long. A real, just a labor of love, made by 33 people. It's called Expedition 33, Clair Obscur. And the story is essentially about this world that has been fractured, and every year there's a paintress out on the continent. Essentially it's a Europe, but it cut off at France, but in a fictional place called Lumiere. And every year, the paintress writes down a number on this monolith. And every year, that year of people dies. It's very, very, yes. And then you go on, and then, so Expedition 33 is the 33rd expedition to get to the continent to put a stop to the paintress's, killing. And then, of course, you discover what it all means. There's a family story in there. It's very complex. This was composed by a French guitarist who just enjoyed composing on the side and uploaded his music to this site that apparently doesn't even exist anymore. And the developer, who was at a different company, came to start Sandfall on his own with a few others, found him randomly. And now we have, an 8-hour album, 150 tracks, and all the other music that's in the game. And this particular, it's taken the world by storm. And this particular track is, I think I'll play Lumiere. And this is the track of the city. And it's their sort of version of Paris, if you will.
City of Lights, a Lumiere.
Obscur, trouble, rature, clair, obscur, guardé aux peintures. Clair, obscur, trouble de rature, courera Eiffel. Clair, obscur, guardé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle. Clair, obscur, trouble de rature, trouvera Eiffel. Clair, obscur, guardé aux peintures.
Thoughts?
The first thing I'd like to note is that, I talked about the phenomenon a couple tracks back about how I thought it was compromised. The content was compromised by the performance. I think this is the exact opposite. I think this music, which is simple, it's a passacaglia.
Yeah.
It's 1, 6, 4, 5, 40 times, or however. That's not bad. No, I know. That's what a passacaglia is. Okay?
It's just funny. It's just funny. Yeah, no, I know.
That's what Bach's great C minor passacaglia is, and any other passacaglia. It's that, which and for listeners that don't necessarily know that term, it means that the bass line stays the same. It's what we call a grounded bass. It repeats the same. So we go. So on this one, it's the 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, 6, 4, 5. And then over top of that, there are variations. There are all kinds of changes in instrumentation and all of that. And that's essentially what a passacaglia is. A chaconne is a similar type of thing. Anyway, so fairly simple in terms of its scope, but really masterfully performed. I mean, I have to say, I think every single person, the singing, that young lady was absolutely delicious, sang with great integrity, flawless intonation, straight tones when it was appropriate, but not usually, and completely connected to the text. Clearly she's French. Clearly she understands every single word that she says and knows.
And she helped create the lyrics as far as
she's fantastic. She's fantastic. And so are all the instrumentalists. Just really, really executed with the highest level possible of classical art training into this piece, which isn't necessarily, to me, it's got to cross. To me, when I listen to it, it would be the type of thing that I wouldn't take seriously as, quote, a classical piece, but I would take quite seriously as a crossover classical thing. There are all kinds of things, like the De Beers Diamonds commercials, or one, it fits in that category. But I can imagine that in the context of this video game, I mean, it's perfectly atmospheric, and it has a certain lightness of being.
Sparkle. To
coin a phrase that if you're saying this is a Lumiere, is that what you say? So it has that feeling. It has that feeling of light and transparency. It is a good piece that is well executed, I think. I think very, very, and I can imagine that it making a terrible impression if it were not well executed.
I think because of its simplicity, probably. Not only that, but it's also, you mentioned the lightness, but this is probably the lightest. Everything else is depressing as hell. I mean, the game is, I've wept playing this game. It's so French. It's so French. It's like grief and death and, everywhere you look, it's very much, the music really helps enhance that journey. And I also think, like, to me, it felt a lot like, sort of the evolution of, maybe not Poulenc, but certainly it felt like a modern chanson writing. I don't know if that's accurate to your, for the basic definition, but there's not much of a. I mean, to me, the harmonic contours of the thing are what stand out. It's not like there's some amazing melody. It's not like there's some cantabile beautiful phrase. But like I say, I mean, I think the transparency of the instrumentation and the execution. I mean, very, very well thought out and beautiful. Let's listen to this. So this is called The Promised Consort. And The Promised Consort is, this is a really interesting piece. So in games now, there's this thing called downloadable content. And downloadable content is expansions. Take the base game, in this case, Elden Ring, which is the game, and they expand on the world, It's an extension of the base game. You pay, whatever much, $30. And in this case, we got a whole deeper look at Elden Ring's story. In Elden Ring, the closest thing I could possibly describe it to is Der Ring das Nibelungen. It is basically the ring cycle.
Yeah.
Sisters, brothers.
So you got some Wagner, you got some Tolkien. You got all that business.
Yes. I can't even explain it to you, but yes, essentially you got some cosmic horror. And so in this particular DLC, downloadable content, this is the final boss, the final enemy, and all of the bosses in this game usually have their own unique themes, so they're very much character driven. In this case, okay, how do I explain this? There is a character that we thought was murdered by this guy named Mog, Lord of Blood. Okay,
cool.
He was guarding. It's so freaking complicated, but essentially, I can't explain it. It's too much. It's too much. It's very Wagnerian.
All right.
Needless to say, you are playing as the dead. You're playing as a dead character, if I recall. And sorry, guys, if I'm missing this up, just bear with me. Who is then possessed by this character you thought was dead. And he becomes the promised consort. So it's all about like it's very complicated. I'm sorry, chat. Oops. Sorry, I don't know why. So this is one character's theme that is still in this. Hints of it. Do we reset for the second phase? It's a weird ending.
Absolutely weird.
It just I think because it probably just loops.
Yeah,
So-
and it probably doesn't matter because again, it's not a standalone piece.
Yeah.
Well, you want to know my thoughts, don't you? I will tell you my thoughts. I think the second phase, as you called it, I think is infinitely more interesting than the first. So to me, particularly this first business, I feel like John Williams and Howard Shore and Carl Orff did it so much better. It sounded to me like it was trying to use the symbolism of that is associated with like Carmina Burana, the beginning of that, as well as I can't whatever the last film of the Star Wars is that John Williams wrote with the big choral stuff. They recorded the London Symphony and the big choral stuff. And it's fantastic. And then Howard Shore, with his great stuff for the Tolkien series. I just think as that kind of music, this was comparatively mediocre. And what made it mediocre to me was the fact that it absolutely did nothing remotely interesting harmonically. It stayed in the tonic for 5 minutes and just didn't do anything. I mean, it was atmospheric. It was atmospheric. In no way was it Wagnerian. Only in the forces employed. What makes Wagner so amazing, apart from the things that reach out and grab you immediately, is the sonic force of it. But it's the harmonic content, and there was no harmonic content in that to speak of that differed, that brought into context. That being said, the second part was infinitely more interesting along those lines. With the sort of the choral stuff with the little wafy sounds of sound like children or young women. I thought that was interesting. I thought sometimes the juxtaposition, that once the orchestra started to come back in louder and louder, and then we had sort of juxtaposed going on at the same time, some of a solo sound of a girl or two, that was clearly, it just had to be amplified over top of this whole thing, or else it would never have been heard. That just seems strange to me, but infinitely more interesting. None of it bad, because we know bad is a bad word to use. I mean, you know what I mean? We don't use the word bad, but I thought it was more imaginative, and it couldn't just be that first part is just, as you say, that's a theme. That's the theme of this guy, it's just that I felt like it was trying. It tried to do a lot sonically. Mm-hmm. And with its instrumental and choral forces, but in order to make that have any kind of meaning, to me, it needed to have a higher degree of variation of content. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. No, it's very interesting to me. Only in the sense that I am trying to. It's not my favorite piece. There's one piece that I actually much prefer, but I was thinking to myself, I play that one for everybody. Maybe I try something different. Which I deeply regret now.
Well, of course. Now you understand. No, don't regret it. So I'm viewing this again, not knowing the game, all this. But for me, it's like as if we're just analyzing the music in a standalone,
which we are,
in a standalone kind of way. In context of the game experience, it might be smack dab in the center of perfection. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But as standalone music, it doesn't stand alone.
Yeah. Well. Gosh, that's so interesting, because in the desire to showcase this stuff and have it, not everybody, I don't need everyone to like it, but in that desire to be like, hey, listen, look at this. This is like really good and interesting. It's always funny, like thinking about what tracks may or may not resonate and why someone will like or dislike something, or because I didn't even think about the fact that the first phase doesn't move or do anything.
But you agree with that. But you agree with me, right?
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, I'm like, oh yeah, it doesn't go anywhere.
But again, that's not necessarily wrong.
It's not,
I'm just saying,
yeah, right.
It's right and wrong doesn't or good or bad doesn't really enter into it. It is I'm just saying, I'm just analyzing what happens. I'm just analyzing what happens. You might come in and your pulse is 95. Oh, in some contexts, that's good. Mm-hmm. If you've just run and you come in and your pulse is 95, but if you've wake up and your pulse is 95, then it's bad. I'm just saying the pulse is 95. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so it might be perfect for the game. And not knowing it, I can't say that, but I'm just analyzing the music itself.
Yeah. No, I think it's so cool. I mean, I think it's so interesting. And again, this conversation about context, I saw a TED Talk with, Benjamin Zander,
Yes, I know. I probably know that one where he's sitting at the piano bench and he's playing Chopin.
One buttock piano playing. Yes.
I think you can say what you want. I've got my feelings about that particular thing, but no, that's all right. No, say it. I'm sure I'll agree with you.
I actually base a lot of what I talk about and the way I talk about things on that TED Talk, because I loved the way that he was like, think about somebody you love when listening to this Chopin impromptu. And to me, it's like
Chopin Prelude.
Prelude. Excuse me.
That's all right.
Is that E flat minor?
E minor.
E minor, thank you.
The E minor Prelude.
I love that one. But so for me, it's like, I don't know. What I love about the way that you've analyzed each of these tracks today is the fact that I listen to them and I'm like, oh, that's just nice. Like why? Sure. Or if I don't like it, I'm like, well, I don't like it because this, right? But what I love about the way that you approach this is like, because I would have never thought about the fact that doesn't move or go anywhere. So that's why it's kind of, because I'm over here like, is he going to notice the tenors going up to the B flat? Because I'm like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? So I find because I didn't play this fight. So for me, this was also out of context, and I enjoy it, but I find it so interesting. I find it so interesting, the conversation around like, how do we connect to things without context, knowing that context is also vitally important. Because when I started the channel, I used to argue with people about like, we don't need context, you just got to feel it, baby. But like, there's more to it than that, obviously.
Well. For example, I mean, when I'm playing a Bruckner symphony, let's say, and take the sixth symphony of Bruckner. It's in A major, and we have the theme, we have the development. And then we have the recapitulation. The recapitulation in context of that is overwhelming. It is just like, it's unbelievable. And out of context, it wouldn't make any sense. But you just go listen to it sometime. You'll see what I'm talking about. It just gives me chills just thinking about it. But in a classical piece of music, which is a standalone piece of music, it provides it is its own context.
Yeah, right.
It is its own context. So it is not fair for me, and I want all the listeners and viewers to know that I am not condemning this music by any stretch of the imagination. I'm saying that, for the purposes of a video game, or for purposes other than standalone concert music, there are mitigating factors, and it would be inappropriate to do a long form thing that has a recapitulation and it just wouldn't even be possible on a video game, and so I'm aware of all of those things, but it does remind me and I love making recommendations of great music that people might not otherwise know. All of Bruckner has the same kind of marvelous atmospheric toughness, particularly the first movements but this the Symphony Number 6, I think people would really, really dig the first movement. The other piece that I want you to go look up, Marco, yes, is the William Walton B flat minor symphony. The first movement in particular, it reminds me of some of the atmospheres that we've been talking about here.
Okay.
On this. It's a great piece of music that I think, knowing that you like some of this kind of stuff, that I think you would also like. Cool. Particularly the first movement. The first movement of the Walton First Symphony is awesome.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. Okay. There's obviously like hundreds more things that I would love to get your opinion on, and I didn't even play you some of like the John Williams-esque stuff that I think is just delightful, and there's so many things. And I also obviously pointed this. I didn't get you with that heavy metal this time, but next time I will. Just to see your face. Well,
unless
you want to.
One of the things that we discussed, you mentioned, I think that ending is strange. One of the big differences between pop music, and I would imagine music like this too, that is different from classical music, is how do you end a piece? That's a huge problem. Beethoven spent years sometimes trying to figure out how to end his pieces. And because they are closed form.
Right.
Whereas this, how many
open on,
and how many pop songs just fade out? They just, the DJ just turns down the sound, or even in the recording, it just fades away because to try to find how you end in terms of how it resolves cadentially and from a tempo standpoint, that is super sophisticated. super sophisticated.
Has anything changed for you having listened to all of this stuff? Like, has your perspective shifted? Like, what are you sort of coming away with this now after listening to however many songs?
There's a great degree of sophistication out there in terms of the music. Some of it more nearly resembles what I call art music. I know that's a snotty term, but I just like art music better than classical music. And in other words, music that holds its own as music for music's sake. To me, that's what art is. Your art for art's sake, music for music's sake. And so some music that is not as functional as this music is its own purpose. I mean, pop music is art music. Sometimes it's not as good art music as classical music, but it's music for its own sake. But for something like this, and for film music, for incidental music, it has a purpose. It has to function in conjunction with another art form. In this case, an art form and a technology. You can't just enter into this unaware of that. Just like everything else, there are good composers there of great music of classical music, and there are mediocre composers of classical music, and the same applies to everything. And there are mediocre bakers of bread, and there are spectacular bakers of bread. And they all have their place. But I'm not going to uniformly dismiss or embrace anything. The great news is that it doesn't really matter in terms of life on this planet. But music and art and enjoyment is one of the reasons we live. What would we do without imagination? And it seems to me that there's just so much that is, there's so much imagination required for these games, not only in the games themselves, but in consort with these games, the music, all of this, which is more than merely background music. It seems like it to me, like a lot of it really sort of heightens the goals of the game.
There's a companion pieces usually.
Yeah.
If someone came up to you and said, "Hey, would you want to conduct video game music now?" Would you say yes, or would you be like, "Well, I'm not so sure about that"?
I think I'd be selective. I think I'd be selective in what I'm doing. First of all, it's not something that's going to happen, probably. But I would not dismiss it out of hand. I might dismiss. I'll put it this way: I wouldn't dismiss it because it's video game music.
Right.
I would dismiss it because it's good or bad, because it's mediocre music.
Yeah.
If it were mediocre music, if it's wonderful music, I don't care what you call it. I don't care what you call it. Video music, symphonic music. There are all kinds of things that labels are there to help at a certain level. But I think that, so for example, that the piece that I said was really well performed, the Lumiere, the one that we listened before this.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do with that. You can't really extend that beyond what it is. But it's a worthy thing. So anyway, I'm sure there are great things. I would be interested in one of these concerts to know, at what point do you, how long do you play these pieces for? Or surely you must have some context around it.
There's usually a video.
Yeah.
And they conduct to picture.
Yeah.
So it's all like, the beat and all that stuff.
I wouldn't be opposed to exploring it because there's some decent stuff. Life is too short to get hung up on labels. But life is also too short, from my perspective, to from a conducting thing. Do you know how many masterpieces that I would give anything to conduct that I have never conducted and that I never will conduct? So I try my best to spend the time working with music that means the most to me. So a lot of things get left off of that because life is short. So that's the thing. But I love what you're doing with this, because you approach all of this with a very well trained and refined musical knowledge and palette yourself. So I think I'm sure your folks glean a lot from what you have to say, and I hope that they glean a lot from what others bring in, and I'm sure they do.
I appreciate that, Stephen. Thank you. Yes, no, it's been such a treat for me. I mean, I know, like I told you when we started, like I've been looking forward to this for a year. I messaged you a year ago, and then I was like, I'm gonna get this guy to the
Yeah, I'm glad, and listen, and we'll do it again. I love it.
I'd love that,
and I hope I haven't tanked your career by anything I've said. Maybe I've tanked my own. I have no idea.
as far as we know, things should be okay, I think. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and again, thank you, Stephen, for stopping by. And yeah, we'll see all of you later. Take care. Bye.